Welcome back to another episode of Pastor Talk. I'm here with a good friend, Jeff Crane. Hi.
Hey.
So, let's get right. We're going to talk about creation today, but before we go there, what did you like about last week?
Oh, what didn't I like? That would be easier.
Oh, okay. What didn't you like? You were
like
sitting across from me?
No. I didn't like that it ended because it was really good.
True. It had to end at some point, though.
Oh yeah, I love the study. About how the Hebrew showed emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
Helped to enrich our Bible study. Language, community, text. I mean, this whole lesson, not just last week, but the whole thing is really helped in Bible study, and really wanted to dig more. So yeah, it was good in different languages. What we talked about, like with shalom and
Yes, that was a good one. Chesed was another word.
Chesed
the other
was
word, yeah.
Yes, and how
I went on my little spiel on that.
Yeah, and how it's so true that it's hard to translate one word from another because you miss so much.
Yes.
I mean, we learned that in college. We learned that you speak Spanish, and I've heard you talk to me before about there's just not a word in English that will translate this word. and it's true, you miss much.
Yeah.
But the translators, they did the best they could with what they had.
Yeah.
And and also it points to that what I learned last week from the Sabbath School lesson is you don't really have to understand Hebrew and Greek to study the Bible, but it does help.
Yeah.
And in today's society, with everything that we have, there's so many programs that a person can grab and put on their computer to help them understand the Hebrew word and the Greek word. You don't even have to you don't have to know what the letters are. It says it right there for you. It'll pronounce it for you. So it was just good. It helped enrich Bible study, and I'm looking forward to today talking about creation.
Well, I enjoyed it too. It's pretty much actually the same reasons. I love seeing how words function, and it's very nice. But today we're gonna get to pretty much, for me, what I think is one of the two topics or issues that we can talk about that can either make or break Christianity. Okay. The first one being, obviously, was Jesus a real person, and did he actually die on the cross, right? So the historical Jesus. And then the next one is creation.
Oh,
is it
yes.
a literal 7-day creation, or was this some
over thousands of years,
millions of years? And there's little nuances here and there, right? You have your just straight, naturalistic evolution, which is Darwinian evolution. Then you have, it will be nice if we can have like a little whiteboard, you can draw it. But, you have that, and then you have theistic evolution, which is where God was in it, but it was still over millions of years. And then you have creationism, which is what we have. But within creationism, you have different things. You have the young earthers, which everything was made 6,000 years ago. But then there's a group that says the earth was old. Life is young, but the earth is old. So God, when let there be light, there was a gap between let there be light and the first day of creation here on earth. So everyone kind of finds a place where they are.
Yeah, I haven't heard too much of that last one that you're talking about.
I think that one's interesting.
I've heard much of the young earthers, and I've heard that each of those days was 1,000 years.
Oh, yes.
And they take that from that verse in Peter where it says 1,000 years is a day and a day is 1,000 years.
Perfect example of bad Bible studies.
Right. And I've heard that before. And, I remember I had a person tell me that, talking about, they want to get into the whole thing of where God says, let there be light, that there was the actual sun, but he had it covered up. So it was like a cloudy day, and then all of a sudden, when he made the sun, he moved that away, and there was the sun. And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
about
I've
that.
heard something similar to that. I forget what's the actual term for it. I think it's like it's something close to terra firma, but the whole idea is that Moses was like in vision on earth. So what he saw when God said, "Let there be light," was then the light shining through, because that's what he saw from his perspective, as opposed to God's perspective. You can argue that, however you want. I wasn't there, so I don't know.
My belief is there was light.
There was light.
There was light.
Yeah. It's a little bit difficult. It's a little bit dicey, but what's important to talk about this chapter, especially, and also chapter 2, we'll talk about that one later next week, is, was it real? Was this an actual historical event? And part of that was an actual scientific detailing of what was happening. I don't know if you understand what I said.
Now you get
Okay, so that's
deep stuff.
So this is where it gets
we'll
tricky.
try to break it down. And I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
So this is important, right? Because as Christians, we believe that this is a historical narrative. It works.
It actually happened.
It actually happened. But implied in that was it scientific or not? Is this a scientific explanation of, that Moses gave? Or was this some kind of like, oh, well, this happened, but I'm just making things up? But so let's start with verse 1, right? Why don't you read verse 1?
Well, we can kind of say it, but it's good to have it there. Genesis 1:1 says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth."
Okay, so what do you think? What do you read from that?
Well, it kind of tells. To me, it kind of answers two questions: who and when, and what. Three questions.
Three questions, not two.
Yeah, who, when, and what. Who did the creating? When it was created, and what was created.
Yeah. So
it kind of gives us a starting point of everything.
Yes, absolutely. So who's a who?
That would be God. When is in the beginning, and what is the heavens and the earth.
Yeah. Now, this is, obviously everyone knows, and it must have, I can't say everyone knows, but for a good part, a chunk of population, Christian world, they know this verse. But now, verse 2, for me, is what I like the most. Now, the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we have the who, the what, and the when. So God, in the beginning, he created heaven and earth. And then you have verse 2, and it says, but now the earth was formless and it was empty, just totally devoid of life. There was absolutely nothing.
Darkness.
It's just a ball just floating in space.
Yeah. Water everywhere.
Yeah, that's all it was. And then what we find afterwards, I'm going to suggest, is probably one of the strongest theological claims we find in the whole entire Bible. Because the phrase formless and empty, or without form and void, are phrases that come up over and over in the Bible. I don't know if you've ever noticed that in the Old Testament. You have this. And more specifically, Jeremiah uses that phrase when the destruction of Jerusalem happens. He says the vultures were flying around and he saw and everything was formless and void. But here, for Moses, he's saying, look, there was no form, there was no structure, and there was nothing in it.
Right.
So what does God do now?
Yeah. He's just there.
Yeah. So what God now does is he takes something that has no shape, has no form, it's all completely empty, it has no life, it's just useless, just nothing.
Basically.
And he's going to do something marvelous about it.
Yeah.
He's just going to totally radically change what it was to what it will be now.
It's kind of like the story, the potter and the clay. Mm-hmm. We're about to turn this big blob of clay into a wonderful masterpiece.
Absolutely.
And, and that's what we see here in the Genesis account of creation.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, if you want to say, it's kind of like sanctification.
Go preach. Cue in the music.
One day.
Yeah. So now the first thing, right? So here we have God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So,
yeah,
what comes to mind?
Well, I'll tell you what comes to mind for me is John chapter 1. Talking about Jesus. Mm-hmm. The light came into the world, but it wanted darkness more than it wanted light. I mean, that's what I think of. Mm-hmm. Jesus phrases to the people over and over again, you shall be the light of the world. Walk in the light as he is in the light. Mm-hmm. There's just something about God and light mm-hmm. that they go together because that's who God is. I mean, he's not a God of darkness. He's not a God of hiding himself. He's a God who exposes himself and shows who he is. I mean, that's what the Bible's all about. It's a revelation of God.
Yeah. So we have here God now saying, "Let there be light." So there's this visible light.
And it's something too. Sorry.
No. Go ahead. Yes.
But it's something. And you find this out through all of creation, except for human beings. He creates something.
Oh, you're jumping ahead of the gun. You're jumping ahead of the gun.
Sorry.
Take it back.
Okay.
You did not hear that. No one heard that.
No.
Okay. So here we go.
Sorry.
Day 2, right?
Yeah.
So you're jumping ahead. Come on, man.
I'm sorry.
You're supposed to read my mind.
Yeah, well.
So day 2 says, "Let there be" what? "An expanse between the waters and separate the water from water." Okay.
Yeah.
So now there's the heavens, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So you have light. Just kind of think of the spectrum of light, right? Just space. Then he makes heavens. Think of space again, right? And then day 3, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered into one place, and let the dry ground appear." So now there's separation. Now there's space again. Right. So in the beginning of verse 2, now the earth was formless, so there was no form. But now here God is creating space, right? He's creating. To use artistic language, he's creating canvas. He's stretching out a canvas and getting ready to do something.
The dry land earth.
Yep.
The seas, the waters.
Yep. So he gathers the water so that in the waters there's space to fill it, right? Because it's formless and void. So he's going to form it so he can fill with something, as you just said.
Yes.
Then the dry land, then the open air, right? And then the light. So then we get to day 4. And this is where it gets really, really amazing. Then it says, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the skies to operate the day, to separate the day and the night, and let them serve as signs to mark the seasons, the days, and years. And let them be lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth." Okay. So this is now, actually, the Hebrew says luminaries. He never mentions sun. He doesn't mention moon or stars. It's luminaries. Yep. Okay. So objects that bear light.
Right.
Because the light was created first. And then, anyway, so.
Yes.
Now he's beginning to, as you said, fill in the spaces that he created. Then day 5. Go ahead. What's going on in day 5?
Then he starts to have waters teem with swarm of living creatures. Birds fly above the earth in the open heavens. And it says that God created the great sea monsters, every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind. And it says God saw that it was good. He says, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the sea, and birds multiply on the earth." That's day 5.
Okay.
So fish and the birds.
Okay. So
and,
now
on turtles and everything else. Anything in the water.
So what's going on? So
he's filling it all.
He's filling it all, right? The issue in the beginning was that there's no form and it's totally empty.
Yes.
So what he's doing, well, let me solve the first one.
He's having form and he's filling.
Okay. So now we get to day 6, right? This is now we're getting to the pinnacle, to the highlight of it all. So day 6. What's going on day 6?
So let me get to here. It says, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after their kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps on the ground after its kind. And God saw that it was good." So he's making land animals here.
Yeah. Okay, so
lions and tigers and bears. Yeah.
Oh my. My oh my was real because I can't believe you just said that.
Well, it jumped out at me.
If I only had a brain.
Yes, I know.
Anyways, so.
But we're not at the pinnacle of creation.
We are not at the pinnacle yet. Exactly. We're not at the pinnacle yet. So we have God creating space, right? You know, the space where he's going to fill things, right? Because there's no form and things are void. So he wants to fill things, but he needs to create the place to place them in. Yeah. So he has the light, but the stars, the moon, the sun. He prepares the waters, the air, and the land. But then he gets to verse 26.
Yes.
What's going on in verse 26?
Then he makes that great statement where he says, "Let us make man in our image."
Okay. Let's pause, because this is significant now.
Yes, it is.
Why does he say, "Let us make man"? I'm going to go there. It's there.
Well, because the whole Godhead had participation in making mankind.
Okay. So this is, we're affirming the Trinity now. Yeah.
Yes.
So God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit.
We're all there.
Yes.
In making mankind.
Yes. Let us, the units of the Godhead, make man in our
image.
In our image. In our likeness, right? So you have first image, then you have likeness. And let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock of the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground.
This answers questions.
A lot of questions. But go ahead. Which one's coming first?
Well, the one question that it answers that everybody asks is, where did I come from? And what reason am I here for?
Yep.
What purpose do I have?
Go ahead. What are the answers?
To me, where did I come from? I came from God.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody,
Him, his image and likeness.
Yeah. Somebody took the time to make me.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives a purpose. I mean, you know, like Adam's purpose here, or mankind's purpose, I should say, at this time, was to do what? To rule over everything, to tend it, to keep it, to care for it.
Okay. Yes. So it's not rule as in a dictator ruling over.
No.
Yeah. So all of mankind.
You're a servant.
Yes. Yes. Servant leader.
Yeah. Servant leadership.
Is stewardship. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is now. So it's important to note verse 26, the language, right? So let us make man, but now it's not just man as in Adam by himself, but man as in mankind. So he's talking about man and woman. So the human race.
Yeah.
Let us make the human race in our image, in our likeness, and let them, all of humankind, rule or have, dominion to watch over, to tend and care over the fish of the sea. Now, the important that I want to, I don't know if you've seen this before, but this word ruling over is similar words that are used for the high priest and his service in the sanctuary. So here the role that, and you see it more clearly in chapter 2, the role of humankind over the creation is the function that a high priest is supposed to perform in the sanctuary for everyone else. That's the type of tending, that's the type of caring, the ruling over. That's that type. That's the call that's happening.
Well, this kind of was their sanctuary.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And then verse 27,
created them male and female.
So God created man in His own image. Okay, so humankind. In the image of God, He created him, humankind. Male and female, He created them.
Yep.
Okay, so God is the one acting. He's creating the action.
Right.
And what He is doing is He's reproducing His image. And I remember doing a short marriage seminar before. And what I found that was so amazing in this study is that the image of God is not just man, and it's not just woman. It's both together. You have here this idea, the image of God, what he created was the them, the family unit, the combination of both. And here, going back to purpose, right? Our purpose and our origin and all of this, when God created you, myself, Jessica, Tara, Joey, Elisa, Lena, he created all of us so that we, within our own family circle, in our own nucleus, can project and portray the true image of God.
Well, and in marriage, this was as we get into it, we see that God performs the first wedding there. Marriage is kind of a symbol of what the unity that they're supposed to have, that God and the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit all have together.
Yep.
And that's what it's supposed to portray. That's what a marriage is supposed to portray. As they are faithful to one another. In marriage, we're to be faithful to each other.
Absolutely.
No one is supposed to come in between, because no one comes in between them. And so, that's so true. And, whenever I think of that, thing that popped in my head when you were talking about the priestly ministry there in the sanctuary, the same wording there, I thought of like David and him as a shepherd, tending sheep. Moses and the care that he had for Israel.
Yeah. Moses is a great example. Was it chapter 33? He says, "Blot me out. Don't kill anyone else. Just blot me out of your book. I won't go to heaven so that everyone else can go to heaven." That's the type of caring that we're talking about.
Yeah. David. The list could go on, and Jesus. Paul. Yeah. The way he cared for all the churches that he ministered to. And so we see what. And that's the purpose that God gave to Adam, and the purpose that God gave to all of his servants, like you and I and Chris with the Raleigh Church. And that's the care that we're supposed to have when it comes to our people. You and I are married, you with Jessica and Lena. You're supposed to have that same care with them.
Yep.
Me with Tara, Joey, and Elisa, my grandkids.
Yep.
I have a longer list than you do.
Yeah, you have to.
And my son-in-law. That's the kind of care that I'm supposed to have. And
I kept the perfect number.
Yeah, okay, whatever. But it all goes, and what we see in creation is just that the care that God has. Sometimes I'm like David, like, Lord, you have all this that you care for. Who am I that you're mindful of me?
Yeah.
And but anyway,
this is so important to look, because it really begins to shape and reveal who God is.
Yeah.
This is a God who takes notice of imperfection. He takes notice of emptiness. He takes notice of formlessness. And he does his best. And best is an understatement, obviously.
Right.
To make it perfect.
Yeah.
So that for me that's grace. That's hope for me. If God takes notice of what was this ball of water and says, look, I can make a masterpiece out of this, how much more for a sinner like me that was created in his likeness and image?
Well, and that's the thing too, is the thing that I take out of this whole creation thing is, as wonderful as it was that he spoke everything into existence. I've never been able to speak anything into existence. Maybe an argument probably, but but I've spoke that into existence. But to actually create something, for me, you and I and anyone else, we can't sit here and say, okay, let there be a ball right here. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
We don't have the power to create like that. But God can. But God does. He has the power to create. But what I love most about this story of creation, and I'm going to say a true story about creation because I believe it's fact.
Absolutely.
Is the simple fact that the point we're on now about making man in our image is the fact that God took time not to speak it, but to form it, to
Yes.
form man with his own hands. I mean, David, what psalm is it that he says?
132.
You formed me in my mother's womb. You knit me together.
Yes,
You know, everything that I am, you put together. You know, he didn't just say, let there be Joe Peretti. Let there be Jeff Kramer.
And it was too impersonal for God.
Yeah. He wanted to actually, you know, it's kind of like a relationship.
Yeah.
You know, you don't build a relationship far away from each other. You build a relationship being close. And that's what I think that's what God is showing us as human beings, that I want to be right there with you. And it starts the day I created you.
Yep.
You know, I want a personal, loving, growing, affectionate relationship with my creation.
Yep.
You know, because the theme of the Bible is, I will be your God, you will be my people. Mm-hmm. I want to dwell with you.
Yep. Oh man.
So anyway,
beautiful.
I mean,
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. That can preach. That preaches.
And I'll tell you something else too. And I'm sorry, I'm going off. This is what preachers do.
It's okay.
Is that, you know, we started at the top of this program with about all these different beliefs when it comes to creation. The neat thing about all this is it was a literal 24-hour period that he did everything.
Well, 7 days. 7 days. Yes, it's 7 days a week. Yeah, yes. 7 days, 1 week. Yeah, yes. And the days were 24 hours. Yes. Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying.
I'm trying to qualify, yes.
Okay.
Just in case if anyone misunderstood
that. Yeah, he didn't take 24 hours to create something. Yeah. It was a 24-hour day period.
Yep.
You know, because of the Hebrew word there, yom, which means 24-hour period.
Yeah, it's a day. Yep.
And they use what's the number? The cardinal numbers. Mm-hmm. Day 1, day 2, day 3.
Yes.
You know, and so, you know, all the way to the seventh day, which is, you know, it says that God rested. Mm-hmm. He finished his work. He looked at everything. It's very good.
Yep.
But creation is one of the greatest true stories ever.
And there's so many, you know, we can go on and on the scientific aspect of it. You know, there's so many good resources that have been made on this.
There's books and videos and everything.
So we couldn't cover everything, but one thing that I have found interesting is that even with the Big Bang, let's take the Big Bang as a true event.
Okay.
What made the Bang Bang? You know, that's a simple question. You know, so at least whenever I come into conversations about the Big Bang and everything, you know, I believe it. Yeah, that seems very physically, scientifically possible. I can take that. I just say the bang was God. God made a bang.
Yeah, God spoke and bang it was.
I'll be honest. It's a bad pun, but he made a banging job.
He did a bang up job, that's for sure. But you know, but the thing is like everything has to have a starting point.
Yeah.
Everything I mean, that's just like whenever I hear the Big Bang, one of my good preacher friends, he used to say, so, you know, let's take like a car, for example. Mm-hmm. Somebody has to take the parts and put all that together to make a car. It just doesn't happen in a garage, put the car there, and then we're going to wait, and it's going to be put together.
Yeah.
No. You have to assemble it. Just like a painting. You just don't put paints there in a board and say, okay, it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. No. Somebody's got to do it, you know? And so, but anyway, that's the thing about creation is there's so many evidences of God.
Yeah.
You know, even if you call him, what do they call him now? An intelligent designer?
Yeah, intelligent design will be kind of the big umbrella term that we fall under, yeah.
Yeah. So, but still,
yeah,
intelligent designer, which they do without saying God. Mm-hmm. We know who it is.
Well, there's a big spectrum. You know, there are intelligent designers that don't believe in a personal God.
Right.
You know, so it's a little bit different, but
still they come to say that somebody had to do this.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's where a lot of scientific findings is going to lead us to, which is we inevitably are going to have to say, well, there was intelligent design, yeah.
Yes.
And then it just comes to personal preference if you want to say, well, it's this God, or it was, you know, the Christo-Judaic God, or if it was Islamic God, or if it was Buddha or whatever, you know. But that's obviously that's a whole conversation on itself. A
Sorry,
good
didn't mean
resource.
to go down that
No, that's good. But a good resource for that, I think, the Case for Creation.
Yes.
Les Strobel, he wrote the Case for Christ, right? That's his
Good
main
book.
book. But Case for Creation is one on creation and has some good stuff in there.
Very good book.
And there's some other, there's DVDs out there too. We'll probably have those links down there, so everyone can see them.
Okay.
But let's finish off, right? Because we haven't finished day 6.
Okay.
Because I think day 6 ends the best way, so we can get to day 7, because we're running out of time. So, verse 28, God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. This is, rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over all the living creatures that move on the ground. And then verse 31.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is by what the reading says, this is now the very end of the day. This is like the day's about to come over a couple seconds before the 7th day starts, or at least at this point the next day is supposed to start. There hasn't been no numbering of days yet. And it says God saw all that he had made, and it was very good.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the Hebrew term tov meod, good in abundance, overtly good. This was perfect, excellent. This is, in my mind, this is now me imagining this. This is God at that moment patting himself in the back like, man, this was better than what I thought it was going to be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I outdid myself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's something how in all the days of creation, it was good, it was good, it was good, it was good. And then God comes to the 6th day, like you said, right before the Sabbath starts, and he's like, very good.
This is excellent.
And, I just picture God looking out there, and he sees the animals. He sees the 2 people that he made. He sees the fish, the birds flying, and I imagine he's just like the lions are roaring. Mm-hmm. The horses are neighing. The birds are singing.
Tweet, tweet.
The man and the woman are walking around. I imagine they're probably looking at everything.
Oh, yeah. They're probably just like, whoa.
This is their date.
Well, I think I know what Adam was looking at, though. But yeah, anyways.
Okay. But this is their date,
Yeah.
And he sees the fish jumping, and he sees, everything there, and he's just like,
the sun is setting in the distance. Yes. The fireflies are going on. It's all like really nice, and
the moon is there.
Yeah. Oh man, romantic first date.
Yeah. The hills and the valleys, they're not rugged and like they are, but they're rolling.
Yeah.
The grass is actually green.
Yes.
Nothing is dying. The leaves are perfect.
And they're probably holding hands because there's no COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah. And they're not social distancing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a sinless earth.
Yep. Perfect.
Perfect in beauty and in form and everything. And God says, it's very good.
Yep. Now, I presented this a couple times to churches. God didn't have to make a 7th day.
He could have just stopped.
He did what he was supposed to do, right? It was without form and it was void. He filled all the spaces. Mm-hmm. Why the 7th day then?
I heard a preacher one time. He says, there's a reason for all kind of time, but there's no reason why for a 7-day week. What's the reason?
Absolutely. Well, why would now if we go with the logic that God formed and he filled, then why would he form time? You'll have to fill it with something else.
Yeah.
So he made this 24-hour period, which he called the 7th day, and this was, the Sabbath of the Lord, so this is the day that God rested. So what did he fill it with? What do you think? It's a trick question. It's a trick question, but I'm just going to throw it out there.
Okay, I'm going to answer your question with the question.
Okay.
What do you think?
So God, again, right? The whole forming and filling, form, fill. You now have this period of time, and he has to fill it with something. That's the actual pattern that's been going on. Mm-hmm. So what does he do when you go to Genesis chapter 2, verse 2? It says, by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work, and he blessed the seventh day and made it holy. And this is a key phrase right here. Because on it he rested from all the work he had creating that he had done. So God rested and he blessed it. And the reason why he did all of that is because he already spent time in that space of time, if that makes sense. So when God created this time period, this day, he didn't just fill it with nothing. He filled it with himself. This was him experiencing this with Adam and Eve. Mm-hmm. This is why I think the Sabbath is such a beautiful time that you and I should take advantage every single day. Every single week that it comes around. Because this is a time that God said, look, I'm not going to do anything except just simply walk with humankind.
Yeah, because so much so, I mean, it's not a rest like God was tired. Mm-hmm. That's not what
there was no need for the rest.
No. I mean, he didn't get tired. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Bible tells us he doesn't sleep nor slumber. Yep. But it's a time, like what you're saying, it's a time that God wants to be with us. It's these 24 hours that I want to be completely with you.
Yep.
And it's something, too, that if you look at all of creation, that's the only day that God mentions where that day is blessed and sanctified.
Yep.
And sanctified is a word that we could say that he's set apart for holy use.
Yep.
So anyway, so that's what it was about.
Yeah, and rightly so, though. It's set apart for holy use, not, for the simple reason that was the day that he took time to spend with humanity.
Right.
His own presence in this time made it holy. This was the whole purpose of it was Adam and Eve were just created mere hours ago. So what is he going to do? You know what, Adam and Eve, come with me. Let me walk you through, the Garden of Eden. Look at all of this, and it's such a beautiful picture of a God, a personal God that wants to be intimate with his creation. Right. He doesn't want to just simply let there be Jeff by Jeff.
Yeah, it's not deism.
Yeah, it's not that. This is, I like Jeff. I like his nose. Let's make do the nose this way and his ears here. And
I mean, you could get into all the health benefits of a weekly rest and this and that and the other, and it's true. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs a rest period, and God gave it to us there. But it's just something how in the creation story, like what you're saying, that God created man, and then he says, I'm going to create a 24-hour period where it's just you and me.
Yep.
And I can picture God walking with Adam and Eve and just showing them all creation and everything mm-hmm. else, what I've done. And, look at this beautiful world that I made for you that,
And the thing is, Adam and Eve weren't tired. They were just created mere hours before.
Yeah.
So there was yes, there is a health benefit now today in a sinful world. But in its original state, it wasn't because you were tired. It wasn't because of any health reasons.
No.
It was a relationship issue. This was, I want this time so that you and I can bond.
Be together.
Forever.
Right. And just like now, I mean, as busy as our world is with everything that we have to do, God still has the Sabbath for us where he says, set that aside, mm-hmm. And let's spend time together.
Yep.
Don't worry about that. Let's spend time together. Let's work on our relationship.
Yeah.
Not that we have it all week long, in the other 6 days, but God says on this seventh day, I want it to be just you and me exclusively without anything in between.
It's my special date day with God.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like, I'm sure you and Jessica have date nights. Yep. Like Tara and I have date nights where we go out just so we can spend time together talking. And
we actually had one yesterday. But
yeah, there you go. You know, talking and getting together. And so that's what God wants to do with us, especially on the Sabbath, where it's just 24 hours of just him and I.
And it has nothing to do with anything. Simply just, man, it's God's time.
Yeah.
Like, sure, that's, for me, you know, I love how John puts it, you know, to finish this off, you know, 1 John, I think it's chapter 3, verse 4, where he says that his commandments are not burdensome.
Right.
You know, God's command to keep the Sabbath wasn't to be a burden over people. It was to be the total opposite.
Right.
To have you be free to develop this relationship with God without all of this noise that happens in the world.
Yep. The Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, I think this is a good point to stop. Because next week we're going to talk again about about creation. We're going to get a little bit deeper. So thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next week.